Today, both teachers and laymen alike are very concerned about our current educational system. Studies and evaluations are being completed. Hard questions are being asked. How can our sophisticated current educational system produce so many functional illiterates? Is our system still working? And are our children really learning? My name is Jim Shaw, and I welcome you to Premise, a format to search for the truth. Our guest today is a Christian educator, an innovator, and yes, someone who is very concerned and interested in the youth of our world. Our guest is Barkley Moore, president of the Oneida Baptist Institute in Oneida, Kentucky. And Barkley, we welcome you to Premise, where we're trying to search for the truth. And I guess I should ask you, first of all, tell us, what is the Oneida Baptist Institute? And I have been told it's the best kept secret in Kentucky. Is that true?
Well, I suppose it is. The Oneida Baptist Institute is the only Baptist boarding school in the state of Kentucky, and one of about 7 in the United States, so it is a unique work. We're no fly-by-night operation. This is our 86th year in Christian education. We have young people from all parts of the state of Kentucky. We have them also enrolled from 18 other states and from 17 different nations. We have approximately 500 boys and girls on our campus and nearly 100 staff. We're located in eastern Kentucky, 40 miles east of Interstate 75, east of London, Kentucky.
The public school system, of course, as we all would say, has been the greatest system for education the free world has known the last couple hundred years. There does seem to be questions that people are asking today. In my talking this week with one of the professors in the Department of Education at Murray State University, he gave me some figures concerning some of the things that we're seeing concerning the people that are graduating from our public educational system and really are functional illiterates or cannot really handle the everyday average task of life. Let me give you some figures that he shared with me. First of all, from a University of Texas study in 1975, in the adult performance level study, we're told that dealing with people 18 and older, there were 20 million functional illiterates at that time. In 1979, the Adult and Continuing Educational Yearbook stated that there were 25 million illiterates in America. And of course, as Southern Baptists, I understand that we are working in the illiteracy program and reaching people and teaching them how to read from the Bible. In talking with some representatives from that group, I found out that in our country now, according to the Better Homes and Garden magazine, there's over 60 million functioning illiterates, and they are projecting by the year 2000 to be between 80 million and 100 million. What is the problem?
Well,
what are we doing?
We're seeing this in our work at Oneida. Of course, all of our young people come to us from the public school system, not only here in Kentucky, but all over the nation. And we see a large number that come in each year who are supposed to be in 9th, 10th grade, and when we test them, we find them testing at 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade level. And so we address that problem. We don't believe in social promotion at our school. This is one of the problems that we have. In recent years, we've had this philosophy of you promote the child on to the next grade whether they're able to handle the work or not. We do not do that, do not believe in doing that. And we presently have in our school about 15 adult teachers and teacher aides working with about 40 of our young people on a very intensive 6-7 hours a day basis. You know, if a child's years behind, we believe in just stopping in place and working on the foundation, on reading and on basic math skills, and working with them ever how long it takes, 7 hours a day, right through the school year, through the summer months, to get them on a solid foundation. And we find many young people with this kind of more individualized attention and that kind of approach. They've got the ability. It's just a matter of building their foundation, and they move right ahead and go on to graduate from high school with a normal diploma and indeed go on to college. And we have several each year graduating from college who came to us already dropped out of school or about to be dropouts and so forth. So we're working very much with this, and we're seeing this. I think one of the basic problems that's happened in the last 30 years in our educational work in the United States, we got the idea after World War II and began to put it into practice that having bigger schools would be to have better schools. And so we madly all over the nation began the work of consolidation, and shutting down our smaller schools and building ever bigger and bigger buildings and hauling our children miles and miles farther on school buses, and with the idea that having a great complex and everything sort of under one roof from all over the county and so forth, that we were going to have better education. But of course the results have not borne out that. In fact, we've seen much the reverse for nearly 30 years. We've seen a declining rate in young people's achievement as they're entering their university years. There's been a decline for almost a 30-year period now each year. I think just been 1 year in these years when there was a little bit of a rise, but basically it's been a decline. And I think it goes back to we've made our schools much too big. You can have something too big.
Let me share also something that Dr. Mazzarazzo, this doctor in the Education Department of Murray State, shared with me. And they did a survey and asked the teachers, what is the problem? Why are we having this situation in our schools? Why are we having better teachers and better institutions and better facilities, and yet still have this problem with the graduation of functioning illiterates? And I found it quite interesting to say that they felt like that the key factor was the environment at home. And he said they had indicated that, number one, the breakdown of the traditional family, with over 50% of our children coming from divorced homes and broken homes, the moral factor, not an emphasis on moral behavior in the home, the time factor, no individual study or reinforcement by the parents of what they're learning at school. And he says in the first 10 years of a child's life, most learning takes place, and that feeling of security and that sound family foundation is so very important. What would you say to that?
Well, I think that's very true. I think there are several major factors, and certainly that's one of the most important. I think there are several other things that go with that. When the Oneida School, for example, was begun 86 years ago, there was a tremendous need for it. We were in an area where there were no schools and there were no roads, and at that time this school was begun, and there was a tremendous need. Well, today we have large modern public schools, we have fine blacktop highways, and yet today there's 1,000 times greater need for the Oneida Baptist Institute than when it was begun 86 years ago. There have been four major shifts in American society that contribute to this, and one of them is this very thing that you've alluded to, the breakdown of the home. Our school, being a boarding school, of course, has always been a home as well as a school. And yet today, the fact that it's a home is many times more important than it was 86 years ago for the very thing that you've just mentioned. 86 years ago, divorce was practically unheard of in our country. Today, of course, about half of all marriages break up at some point. 4 out of every 10 teenagers during their teenage years are living in a single-parent home. And of course, whichever parent has custody, normally the mother, but increasingly the father's getting custody now, whichever parent has the custody of the child, as long as they're a single parent, they're trying to do the work of both mother and father. They're housekeeper, breadwinner, chauffeur, coach, counselor, disciplinarian, trying to do all of these functions. And of course, God intended that this task be done by two people, not just one. And I think this is quite true. The single parent is so involved in just trying to make a living that they're not able to give that nurture with their children and in those formative years of their educational process where they might spend some hours each day with the child or at least be available when the child really needs them. It's just about physically impossible for them to do it. And I think as important as the breakdown of the home in this whole situation has been that we have made our schools too big. I really feel that. I think that when you get past a certain number, that you lose the sense of community within the school. You lose discipline. You cannot teach without discipline. You know, in the old days, when our schools were smaller, the school was very much a community institution. Teachers and parents worked together for the benefit of the child. They knew one another, that the teacher knew the backgrounds of the young people they were working with. They knew those parents knew and respected those teachers, and they worked together. Mm-hmm. But today, that's not doing very well because we have our schools rather far removed from most families. The children are hauled on buses there. The teachers really do not know the families of most of their students. They do not know their backgrounds. Those families often do not get to know the teachers. There's a much greater distance today. And as a result of that, there's not that close working together. And many times, in fact, they're almost working against one another. Many times teachers do not feel that they're getting the support of the parents, you know, as they try to deal with the child. And oftentimes the parent feels like, well, the teacher's not concerned enough. And the one that's losing in all this, of course, is the child.
Let me ask you, we know that when our school systems began, there was a great emphasis placed on prayer and the Bible.
Yes.
In most of our school systems today, public school systems, there is not.
Yes. Well,
does it make a difference, and why?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's no question it makes a difference, and we're seeing that increasingly. Of course, the first textbook in American education was the Bible. Schools were begun initially in our nation for that very purpose, that people might learn to read and write, and the purpose of learning to read was to be able to read God's holy word. It was the first American textbook used in every school. And of course, until the last 30 or 35 years, all your schools, when the Oneida school began, of course, it began as a Christian school, but every public school was in effect a Christian school also. In every school you had chapel services, in every school you had prayer, in every school you had Bible study. And this is another one of those reasons why our program today, 86 years later, I think is even 1,000 times more needed than it was then, because of this other fundamental shift in American society, that we no longer have prayer in our schools. We're not allowed to do so. We're no longer able to have chapel. We're no longer able to study the Bible. And yet the Bible, whatever our personal religious faith might be, it is a fact that the Bible is the basis of our Judeo-Christian tradition, of our whole American society, our laws, our customs, so many things is based on the Bible. And really, a boy or girl is not truly educated if they're ignorant of the Bible. Whatever their personal religious faith may be, whether they believe the Bible in a spiritual sense or not, it is still a very valuable thing for people to have a knowledge of. And yet our young people are growing up without this. And in effect, our schools are almost like a ship without a rudder. The very ethical, there has to be some core to any program. There's something that's coherent around which the program is built, and that's on what it was built for hundreds of years. The greatest names in American educational institutions all began as Christian institutions, basically. Names like institutions like Harvard and Yale. These began as Christian schools. Brown, so many of them. All of these were Christian institutions. And of course, they're not generally classified so today, Harvard and Yale and so forth. And so we've removed sort of a rudder from our whole, what American education was for hundreds of years, back to the Puritan forefathers and the Pilgrims.
I think what the American public seems to be looking for today is the bottom line. Is for
results. Yes, results.
And from what I have read and what I have seen as far as where you are, there seems to be results. Could you share with us, in just maybe one case or two, is there some real success stories?
Yes,
Yes.
Of course, why do people come to a private boarding school in the hills of eastern Kentucky? Why do they come from all over the state of Kentucky and from many other states, presently from 18 different states? Why do they come from many different places? Because they have heard and they're seeking something more than they have. And we have many young people who come to us well, for instance, our oldest graduate this year is a young man, 26 years of age, who in one of our counties here in Kentucky had been a dropout for 7 years, had just dropped out. I read some statistics just yesterday that this year approximately 700,000, last year rather, 700,000 young people dropped out of our public school system. Well, 700,000, you multiply that by 10, that's 7 million young people dropping out over a 10-year period. I mean, that has tremendous implications for the future of our country and for what's going to be happening in our whole society in the next 25, 30, 40 years economically and every other way. Well, this young man was one of those dropouts. He had a sense of low self-image, that he wasn't worth much, couldn't learn much, apparently had a poor foundation, and he just lost interest in school and dropped out, was running the roads for 7 years, sometimes in jail, sometimes smoking pot, every now and then drunk. Not much work, couldn't find it, and if he got it, not many skills to hold the job and not hardly able to read. And he came to us 6 foot 5 inches tall after 7 years of that, and we tested him, and he tested at second grade level. Well, we have been working with him very intensively since we got him some years ago, and he will graduate this coming May. And he is college material. He has the native ability. He still has some skills he needs to improve, but he's made such tremendous progress. And the beautiful thing about him is he has such a sense now of himself, of his own worth. He realizes, hey, I'm not a dummy. I'm somebody. And this is one of the key things that so many of our young people have lost in our nation. Over the past 20, 25 years, we've seen such a increased usage of drugs, for example. A tremendous millions of our young people literally smoking pot. And hundreds of thousands into more serious things than pot, into getting into hard drugs. The alcoholism rate among our young people has increased dramatically over the past 15 or 20 years. The suicide rate has increased 150%.
In fact, don't they say that now one of the leading causes of death in teenagers?
That's right.
Suicide?
It's suicide. It's averaging at least 1 an hour in our society. And you know, 30 years ago, suicide was unheard of among teenagers. So you have all of these things, and it all goes back to a feeling of rootlessness by our young people, and a loss of their purpose and self-image, and they have no self-respect or little self-respect, and therefore they have no respect for education. They don't respect the government. They don't respect the church. They don't respect their parents. They don't respect the family. And it's all sort of a vicious cycle that we've gotten ourselves into.
That really leads us to the question of discipline. Now, there are many varying views on discipline today in the educational system. Is it the reinforcement of true love, or is it punishment? And is it necessary?
Well, I think discipline is true love, and there has to be, as you deal with a boy or girl, they know who you are, and they know where you're coming from, and you have to really care about them. I think that's primary to be able to work with any person. They have to understand that you really care about them as a person. But I think if you really do care about them, you will care enough about them, if necessary, you will discipline. And I think it's a sad thing in our educational system, but you know, we've lost a great part of our discipline. And where there's no discipline, there can be no teaching. You cannot teach an undisciplined classroom. You cannot teach where there's not order. You cannot teach where there's not mutual respect both for the teacher and for ever who the teacher perhaps is called upon to recite. You know, a lot of times a classroom can be just like a zoo, and you can have the best meaning students in the world, but they can't get much out of class if they can't even hear the teacher. And I think this is a problem that we have, and it relates again to the breakdown of the home, again to the fact that a lot of times teachers and parents are not working together. They're often working at cross purposes. The student is playing one against the other, as oftentimes a child plays a father against his mother and vice versa, and there's never any good result to that. And so definitely we've lost a great part of our discipline. Therefore, we have lost a great part of the learning process in our schools, and we're seeing the results.
I realize also that your school does not receive any federal or state
That's
tax
right,
money.
we do not.
How does that make a difference
Well, it makes
in your educational
it
system?
makes a tremendous difference, of course, being a private school and being a religious school, receiving no tax support whatever. Of course, we are still free to teach the Bible. We are still free to have prayer. We are still free to have chapel. In fact, we have it daily. At the same time, we want to meet all the requirements, and every graduate of our school meets all the requirements that any public school graduate of Kentucky meets. It's set out by the State Board of Education of Kentucky. Our young people meet all those requirements. It's not just enough to hang Christ's picture on the wall and put Christian over the door and say, well, now we've got quality education. Christian shoddy is just as shoddy as plain shoddy. And it's a sad truth, but we've got many schools today in our country who are calling themselves Christian schools, which are really almost a farce as far as school is concerned. They just have thought about calling it Christian and hanging Christ's picture on the wall and maybe the 10 Commandments in the hallway or something, that automatically makes a quality school. Of course, it does not. It's quality or it's not quality. But if you are calling yourself a Christian school, it should be quality. We should have the very best program possible, and that's what we try to do at the Oneida School. We meet the state requirements for our graduates. Besides state requirements, though, Oneida graduates also had at least a year of Bible study. And they've also have computer literacy. We're in a computer age now. We have a tremendous computer program. They also are, those who are now juniors and those who will follow after will have at least 2 years of a foreign language. We teach 4 languages. We teach 4 years of French, 3 years of Spanish, 3 years of German, 2 years of Latin. We think this is very important because we're living in a shrinking world. In the lifetime of young people today, it'll be as common to go to England, France, or some other part of the world as it may be now to go from Paducah to Lexington, Kentucky. We just think this is important, so we've added it as a requirement for our young people.
A child that comes to your school, if he's not a Christian, if he doesn't come from a Christian background, Do you think that is hurting him not to have a choice as the type of education emphasis that he's getting?
Well, as far as we're concerned, of course, the great majority of young people who come to our school are not Christians. But see, it is their choice to come to our school. We haven't kidnapped any students. We're holding no one by force. But we do not change our program because the majority of our young people are not Christians. We are a Christian school, have been for 86 years. And so we do not go out to recruit or advertise for students. Those who come to us hear about us, and it's their choice or their parents' choice that they be in our school. But having chosen to be in our school, they therefore choose our program. And our program includes, of course, classwork every day, meeting all the state requirements, but it also includes the study of Bible at least 1 year while they're with us. It includes daily worship. That's just when they chose Oneida, they chose to assemble for morning chapel, and every teacher and every student comes to that. And we have young people from about 20 different denominations and even non-Christian religions. Every year we have a group of Muslims, every year we have Buddhists, some years we'll have a Hindu, sometimes we have someone of Jewish background, but we regularly have Buddhists and Muslims. But they know that we're a Christian school when they come, and they understand the fact that we have morning chapel, and they understand the fact that they will attend, and we don't make any apology about that. You know, we don't force our religion on anyone, but we do try to practice it in our daily living, and we have a service every day in which the gospel is proclaimed.
I see. Well, you know, of course, I think anyone would say that there's a place for a private Christian school, there's a place for public education.
Yes.
And we're all concerned that our educational system be the very best it can be.
That's right. We need to keep this duality in American society because, you know, our whole education process began with the Christian schools, but then we built up a tremendous, wonderful public school system. And I think both of them, both the Christian schools and a strong public school system, are both pillars of our democracy, and it's important. You know, nations that have had only a religious type of religious instruction, many of those are dictatorships or that type, just one type thought. I think America's always represented plurality and diversity. And I think it's something that's very important to maintain in our country, that we have a strong public school system, but that we also have a strong system of Christian schools, that our people might have that choice because they've had such a choice through most of our history.
Many times a child will be rejected at public school. Many times he will be put in school after school and still no success. Many times it may seem as he's a hopeless case or she's a hopeless case. I know that you have children like that come to your school, but yet instead of turning them away, you accept them.
That's right.
Why?
We have hundreds who come because of the quality of our program, but we have many others who come for the very things you mentioned. They have failed time after time, and they see themselves as a failure. And this is one of the key things that we can do through Christian education, because from the very point that we come from as we work with that child, we're saying to that child from the moment we meet them, we spend 2 or 3 hours with each child as they come to our campus to show them the school and talk to them about the pros and cons of attending our school. And by the very act of spending some hours with them, we're not just saying with our lips, we care about you, we're showing them that we care. My staff live on campus, our coaches live there. We're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year round. We don't take snow days, we don't, you know, we're there. We're a home, we're a school, we're a home. And we not only tell these young people we care, but more importantly, we show them that we care by the interaction that we have daily, by the fact that we love them enough to discipline them, by the fact that we love them enough to have some chores for them to do. You know, this is another great change in American society in the last 80 or 90 years. 90, 100 years ago, 9 out of 10 children in America lived in a rural setting, and every child had chores, and they contributed to the support of the family, and they had a sense of their worth, and that they had responsibility, even as children, for the well-being of the family. Now 9 out of our 10 children live in urban areas, and they come home from school and they don't have chores to do, they don't have responsibilities, and this again contributes to this aimlessness that we see in so many young people. So many of them getting into drugs and alcohol, they're bored to death. And so many of our young people, because our schools are so large, not getting to take part in school activities, not getting to be on the ball team, the band, or the glee club. It used to be we had 5 or 6 schools in the county, for example, high schools, and you'd have 6 different basketball teams. You know, you had the starting 5 in each of those schools. For instance, you'd have, if the 6 schools, you had 30 young men or 30 young women that were on the starting 5 of the basketball team in their respective schools. Then we consolidated, we wound up with 1 school, so you have 1 team now with 5 on the starting 5. You lost 25 kids there. Then on each of those, in our example, in say your 6 schools, you had 10 others that were on the bench. They didn't play a lot, but they were still part of the team. They identified, they practiced practice every day. So you had 60 more young people involved there. Now with our one school, we've got 10 involved and we've lost another 50. And then each of those schools had its glee club or its choir, whatever they called it, its chorus. And you involved a lot. Now we have the one school and the one. It used to be you had 6 yearbooks and 6 yearbook editors. Now you have 1 yearbook and 1 yearbook editor and 1 staff. And so by the very making our schools so large, we've lost most of our students as far as their active involvement. And the very fact that so many are bused, they wait on the bus, they ride the bus, going home. A lot of American children average at least 2 hours a day waiting for and riding the bus. 2 hours a day, 10 hours a week, 40 hours a month. That's the equivalent of 5 8-hour working days per month spent riding the bus, 45 days a year spent that way.
Well, as we close today, what should be the goal of education?
Well, the goal of education, of course, should be to give people a solid foundation that they can cope in this modern day world, that they have certain fundamental skills, of course, in reading, in writing, and in math. Specifically, this should be one of the goals, and the goal of education, of course, should be that person that is educated come out with a good feeling about themselves and about their society rather than a negative feeling about everything and everybody.
And basically, just a yes or no as we close here, should the system expect something from the child?
Well, absolutely.
And should the child expect something from the system?
Certainly.
It's been a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you.
And we appreciate you being here.
It's been a pleasure to be here.